Welcome back to Boys and Ghouls Film Review. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson, and this is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi guys, how are you?
And we're here to review the third in the franchise, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusades. Crusade.
That's a minute ago.
No, that's not it.
That's Star Wars, isn't it?
Let me see.
Whatever. Aha.
Okay. So, let's
Who's in it? Oh, Harrison Ford.
No surprise. Surprise. Yes, and who else?
Well, we have some interesting cast here as usual. We have now Harrison Ford is depicted as a young Indiana Jones as well. So Harrison Ford plays the older Indiana Jones, but in the prologue at the beginning?
Prologue.
The prologue,
would be the best word for it.
Obviously for those who don't know, the beginning of the movie has a young Indiana Jones played by River Phoenix. I think River Phoenix passed away a few years ago in a possible drug overdose in a club in America. Anyway,
irrespective, guys, this makes way for a TV series I mentioned in my last podcast, and a number of book series that go as long as my arm.
Yes, he has a very long arm, folks. Now, I was going through the stars, and Sean Connery is, I wouldn't say dragged out of retirement. I think he was quite retired at this point, but as well, I think he's getting towards one of his last movies. And what happens is they dragged him in there to play Henry Jones Sr. And this movie, even though it's about research the Holy Grail, it's also about Indiana Jones and his father coming to terms with each other during the course of the movie. Anyway.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys, when they were drafting this script, they came up with the idea of Henry Jones father and son duo thing, thanks to a ghostwriter who refuses to be acknowledged in this production.
This script has had, even though it's mainly from a story put together by George Lucas and is it Menno Meyers, whatever. They wrote it. They used different script writers to keep the ideas around, but even the storylines and everything else. And they had Monkey Kings in it, and they had haunted mansions in Scotland, and it got reworked and gradually moulded into the script.
Well, it's actually, according to them, they had earlier drafts of the script because at the time, Steven Spielberg was a little upset that Temple of Doom got such. He didn't like so much the story very much because he thought it was too dark. And
it was a dark movie.
It was dark, and it didn't capture the Indiana Jones thing.
So they wanted to go back and capture that bit more of the Raiders of the Lost Ark sort of feeling.
Yes, exactly, Mike. Yeah. So he used Last Crusade as to apologize to the audience.
I don't know if he apologised. They went to the pictures and they actually saw the
movie, and it was a box office hit.
And it still made a lot of money.
I imagine audiences were thinking this will be another one of those awesome adventure stories to look forward to.
Yeah, just getting back, we have said before, even though we like this mainly fantasy, sci-fi and horror, we do the odd other movie. So for those of you who haven't tuned in before to what we're doing, that's why we're doing the odd movie like this, because we think the guys like this, like Lucas and Spielberg, they've done things like Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, those sort of movies, but they can also turn their talents to writing and directing a really good action-adventure movie.
Yeah, so let's get back into the cast. Who else is starring in it, Mike?
We got Sean. Denham Elliott. Now, Denham Elliott, he was in the previous movies, both the other two, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, so Denham Elliott, he's a Marcus Brody, he's a bumbling twit, but in this movie,
he gets a bit of
he gets a bit more
character
action in this,
development
and it sort of develops that he probably went to school with Indiana's father. Isn't that sweet? Oh, school buddies.
Yeah, I can imagine them.
For you guys who like a bit of, there's a lady called Alison Doody who plays Elsa Schneider. Now, Alison Doody plays an Austrian
Beauty.
archaeologist, something or other, attached to the Nazis. But Indiana Jones doesn't know she's working for the Nazis.
Still a bit of a tough...
But wait a moment, she's actually
in this
Irish. And so I don't see any Irish accent, but she does a Austrian one quite well.
Well, she does have a bit of a European look to it.
Yeah, she's a beautiful blonde with a nice little bod, and lovely blonde hair. She is really beautiful.
Yeah,
lady.
she's quite different from our other two heroines we had in the last two movies. Well, she's still tough, but at the same time isn't a hopeless, hated person in the...
You know how a rose is really beautiful, but it's got thorns?
Yes.
That's what she is. She's a beautiful creature, but
yes.
watch out for her claws.
Yes.
Anyway,
as I said before, unlike
still doing the cast.
I know that, but her character is quite different from the other women who in the where they
had sex with Sean Connery, or his dad,
Henry Jones
Senior, and Indiana Jones. She wasn't fussy, bit of old stuff, bit of young
Mike,
stuff.
Don't put it that way, because people think that they really slept together.
No, not in the movie, but it was implied and suggested that they both,
So who else is in our cast?
Well, I was getting down there. John Rhys-Davies rears his head again as Sala. Yay! He makes a very good dwarf too, He's in Lord of the Rings, guys.
Yes.
And a guy called Julian Glover.
Yeah.
Now, he's been around in different movies and
Yeah,
such.
including The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. But he plays Walter Donovan, he doesn't play a huge part during the movie. He's there in the beginning, and then he disappears a bit, and he raises his ugly head towards the end of the movie because he's sort of like behind the scenes naughty guy.
Yeah.
That he sort of wants a Holy Grail for himself.
Not for the
not for the Nazis, for himself. So he gets eternal youth and that sort of stuff, live forever, and that sort of stuff. But he told Indiana right at the beginning, don't trust anybody. And when he meets him later on in the movie, I said, I told you don't trust anybody.
Yeah, not to mention, apart from Donovan guy, he didn't. He kind of trusted Elsa, but when his father told him not to, well, that kind of adds another double meaning towards why that he should have not trusted the woman that he met recently.
But didn't Henry Jones Sr. say, I didn't trust her, blah, 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 she talks in her sleep.
I like the looks. I like the looks Harrison that Indy has when he looks at his father and thinks, "Oh my gosh, you don't tell me you didn't."
Dad, you dirty old creature, you. Hey, he's not dead. He's not in a pine box. He's still an active male.
Yeah, and despite his age, Sean Connery is pretty much a good-looking man.
Yeah, for an old guy, he's holding it together well. I mean, I'm about that age now, and I don't look anything as good as that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's dive into the story, shall we? So our story begins back in 1912. 1912.
With young Indiana.
Yeah, around the time when the Titanic sank, and right around the time when Indy and his friends decided to go hiking
He was a Boy Scout.
In the Boy Scouts.
Supposedly 13 years old. He's the biggest bloody 13-year-old I've ever seen.
Yes. So he and his friends, they go up to the to some caves, and they start, looking around.
Now, do you tell them a little bit story?
Yes. So Indy heads into one of the caves, and this is where the story. When I was little, I used to think this is no way Indiana Jones, this young kid, because we later see in the caves a man wearing the same fedora hat as Indiana Jones.
It's very strange. And he dressed very similar to the way Indiana Jones dresses.
Yeah.
Apart from the whip.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So we see him. His back is towards the camera.
Yeah.
Is that the right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think. Oh, is this Indiana Jones? Oh, this can't be Indiana Jones, because Indy would never work with thugs. But as it turned out, it's another character named, what's his name?
Garth.
Garth.
Yeah, Garth.
Yes.
Yeah.
But these days people call him the Fedora.
The Garth they had at the beginning, but yeah.
Yeah, and he's played by Richard Young.
Well, there you go.
Yes, hard to believe.
Now, look, we'll skim over this one pretty quickly. These guys I wouldn't say grave robbers, but they're
But they're working for an artifact collector
a greedy guy.
who has a Pandora hat.
A Panama, not a Pandora hat.
Sorry, let me say that.
Panama hat.
Okay, Panama hat. Sorry, guys.
Pandora had a box, I mean, all the evils of the world.
Well, okay, sorry about that.
Panama hat.
Panama hat.
Anyway, these guys work in this guy, and they're digging up some old ruins, and they found this very nice, pretty Spanish gold crucifix crossing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very beautiful, and Indy made it his life by deciding to take it.
It belongs in a museum. He said that before in another movie. Didn't he?
Yes, he has, and we'll
You
never
belong in a museum.
and we'll never see the end of it, so to speak. So Indy steals it, and there's this whole chase scene, which I like.
Do not go into the chase scene too much. There's a whole movie to go through.
Okay, they go for a chase scene, which involves going onto a circus train and him disappearing in a magic box and reappearing outside the train.
Now, there was one bit in here I will mention. There were 2 real lines, involved in this shoot.
Ooh.
2 things here in this scene is this was done on a sound stage and box type thing, that it was rattling, flickering lights. Now, imagine trying to keep 2 lines, calm, while doing this shooting scene, shooting the scene. Now, they weren't over the top. I think I only saw 1 line, but I think it was 2 lines there.
I thought there was one.
No, I think they had 2 lines there to stand in for the other one in case one gets too agitated.
Okay, I get it.
But this is where Indiana got his scarf from for the story.
Yeah.
He's trying to scare the lion away, so he sees this stock whip hanging up on the side of the train carriage, and he flicks it. The first time it flicks, he gets himself on the chin and makes his scar. In reality...
Well, we discussed that earlier,
no,
like
actually,
in our
I
last
found
episode.
out. No, he got in a car accident when he was a young guy. It wasn't at camp.
Oh.
When he was at camp, he learned how to handle reptiles and rats and guinea pigs.
So it was a car accident that chipped his chin.
and he hit his chin.
So
there you go, then,
so
folks.
guys, we were wrong that it was a snake.
No, well, we thought it was, but because I heard differently. But I found out a bit more. It was actually that there was caused by a car accident or something. Now, anyway. Roll on.
Indy gets back home. His dog, Indiana, is waiting for him there.
Strange, that isn't it, folks?
Yes. And just so you guys know, even though you probably already heard me say it, Indiana, the dog, George Lucas came up with the name because his dog is named Indiana too. Not two, just Indiana. Yeah, it was a husky dog.
Whatever.
And
lovely creature.
Another thing about this is George's dog is a husky too.
Yes.
Kind of cute, huh?
Hey, one of his dog was actually in the movie.
That's a good thought, Mike.
Hey, keep it all in the family?
Might be. It's pretty smart.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, anyway, Indy tells the sheriff, guess what? There are thugs who are stealing some artifacts in the mountains, but the sheriff is pleased that he found the cross, but he has to give it back to the guys who dug it up.
They must have had a permit or something. Even though it was wrong...
Yes.
Either had a permit or a bit of graft and corruption, a little brown envelope going to the sheriff.
They probably just said Indy stole it, and the owner wishes the cross to be returned. And he doesn't want to press charges.
Isn't that lovely?
Yes.
Because he's all the lawbreakers.
Yes. Anyway, Indy hands it over, and pretty much he wants to get it back, obviously.
Anyway, let's move on.
And I did like it that the Fedora kind of liked Indy and gave him his hat as a bit of...
not Pandora.
I didn't say Pandora. I said Fedora.
Fedora. Oh, sorry,
Dumbo.
Mum's sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, the Fedora hat guy, he gives Indy his hat and as a bit of a trophy and award for his hard at work.
He said, you're going to lose sometimes, kid, but don't give up, or something. Yeah.
He kind of inspired him in Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. I don't know which episode, but he mentioned it in a episode.
Now, let's go on. This then jumps to... This
1938, I think.
The first bit was 1912, and the next bit's 1938. So Indiana Jones is an older guy. He's a mature archaeologist, and he's... on this boat somewhere or other in a big stormy sea, and the same guy collector guy
Yes.
in the Panama hat is there. He's got a couple of years on him too.
Of course.
And they're battling over the same relic.
Yeah, and just so you guys
Yeah.
know, I found out a little bit more about him, why he's on the seas. Well, not really on the seas actually. It doesn't really matter. I read somewhere that Indy got a tip from a sailor that worked with the man, and he even told Indy that this man seduced his wife, but this turns out to be a plot or a scheme to get Indy on the boat.
Aha.
Yes, and as Indy was trying to get the cross, he gets the drop in the
And stuff. Anyway.
Yes, and I also found out that during the Great Depression, our man in the white hat was going to sell the cross to buyers or collectors, and the one of the collectors is, drumroll please, Donovan.
Ooh. Now, I'll stop you for a minute. This boat scene will look really, really good and look like it was really on a boat in a storm. It was actually done in a water tank at Elstree Studios.
Wow.
With big water dump tanks there to make the waves come over different things.
That was cool.
So it looked so real. Hey, hats off to them. It's I don't think there's too much in the way of graphic. What do you call it? CGI stuff there. I think it was all manual stuff. They had hydraulics and stuff, different things, making shake around and big water tanks dropping. It was brilliant. It looked great.
Yeah, I mean, I love it when people just, as I said in the past, I love it when people do handmade, or not handmade, manual
non-computer
special effects instead of rely on too much on the computer too much.
Yeah, it's good. It shows more imagination. Well, I mean, the computer does all the hard work. It takes the fun out of it. If you look back in the olden days, the special effects were basic. If you want rain on a window coming through, you get somebody with a hose or a sprinkler system outside and shine light through it to make it highlight against the wall. There wasn't anything of CGI. If you had thunderclaps, they had a special machinery there which made a bit of a flash. Yeah, it wasn't added in After Effects or something or other. Yeah, well, it was done manually. And so they say it didn't work out right, let's do it again. Take 3. Yeah.
Yes, so anyway, Indy gets the cross, the boat sinks, and Indy returns it to Marcus, and we get a good cheer from everyone to say that finally Indy has gotten an artifact and he can put it in the museum for good measure.
Isn't that lovely, folks?
So unlike the other times where he gets an artifact and he has to either give it to the rightful owners or he has to hand it over to the government.
Now anyway, he's back at school now.
Yes.
And teaching in his normal teaching clothes. Yeah.
And the girls are drooling over him like
drool.
Like always.
Harvey's luck. I mean, he's teaching in a college. There's young girls there.
Yes.
I mean, he's a stronger man than me. I would have. Anyway, irrespective. He escapes from his students.
Yeah, just so you know, his secretary Irene says that most of his work, the students' work, haven't been graded yet.
Yeah, he's been busy.
Yeah, well, he's always out and about.
How does he teach the students when he's out on adventures such as this?
I don't know.
Every 5 minutes, he's off on a plane going somewhere in the other part of the world. He must have a really good job, folks.
Yeah, I imagine he gets a lot of sick leave, you know.
Sick leave,
yeah.
Holidays.
You know what I mean, like
long service leave.
You remember, Mike? I mean, in those adventures, he often comes back with a few bruises and probably a sore back after all the excitement.
And a bruised ego, maybe, when he hasn't succeeded properly.
Yes.
Anyway, irrespective, he escapes the students and he gets picked up by these strange guys in suits. And they spirit him away into a car and he meets this Donovan guy.
Yes, and who's
a very well-known collector.
Yeah, and he's known for his
donations to
museums
and stuff. So Indiana does not suspect this guy whatsoever.
Nope.
So he appears to be what he says he is.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy who's got his own personal collection, but he donates a lot of things to museums.
Yeah, meaning he's done a lot of networking.
Yeah. And anyway, he tells Indiana about the Holy Grail, and Indiana says, "Yeah, I know all about this. Yeah, all the folklore and the tales." And then he shows him an old relic of an artifact, a broken tablet with a lot of text on it.
Yeah, beautiful one in that.
And some other things there, and that sets him off on his quest. He ends up going to Venice.
Well, actually, at first, he finds out that he first of all declines to search for the Grail, And then he asks why don't you go ask my dad? He's a fanatic about this sort of thing. And Donovan says, we already have. Your father is one of our
he's the first
researcher guys who disappeared.
He's missing.
Yes.
Okay, then Indiana is coerced and he ends up going to Venice, where he finds...
Yeah, well, it's an important part. He discovers that in his mail that he got his father's...
That comes in later.
No, it doesn't come
He didn't even know what the package was. He opened it in Venice.
No, he didn't.
He
didn't.
He had it in his pocket,
He had it with him when he went to his dad's house. And then he opened it up
sorry, my mistake, folks.
Yes.
I must have fallen asleep then. No.
Yes, he opens it at his dad's house after searching the place.
He might have been looking for his diary. He said, and he opened his pocket. He got it out of his pocket. But he'd already decided to go to Venice.
Yes.
At this point.
He realised that his dad's up to his
eyeballs
in trouble, and he knows that his dad's not a field man, so this is out of his depth.
Yeah, he knew Grail lore, but he wasn't an archaeologist or a field man.
I used to think that Henry Jones was an archaeologist, but I found out in the movie that he's a medieval literature teacher.
Medieval literary history teacher, or whatever.
Yes.
Anyway, he makes it to Venice, and he hooks up this beautiful blonde. What's her name? Elsa
Schneider.
Supposed to be an Austrian pretty lady.
Yes.
And she's he's supposed to meet, lined up by Donovan. Now Donovan's supposed to be a good guy, so he didn't suspect Elsa for working for the Nazis. So he trusted her to a certain degree, but not totally.
Yes, that's one of the reasons why he never shared the diary with her at first.
He didn't tell her about it. No.
Yes.
Until later.
That
was a big mistake.
So anyway, our heroes go into the Venice Library, which was a converted church of sorts.
A lot of those buildings were old churches and temples and stuff.
Yeah, well, they were very old and very cool.
But it was really good. Actually, earlier in the movie said, X never marks a spot.
How wrong could you
go?
In
this temple, it had all these windows and markings on pillars, doing the stations of the cross or something or other. Mm-hmm. Now, it had this big X on the floor, which would be the 10th station of the cross for you Christian people. And what would happen is he saw it, that must be, X marks the spot, so I had to break through the floor.
Mm-hmm. And this is the funny bit, when a librarian is marking books.
Stamping books.
And while Indy's stamping on the floor to break apart the floor, the man is in time with stamping the books, and you hear that every time he stamps.
Bang. And this little librarian guy is looking really strange with his rubber stamp in his hand and this ink pad. Now, what the hell is that noise? Are my ears going funny?
Yeah, mostly. It was
anyway,
hilarious.
They break through the floor and they find a way down to a catacombs underneath the library, which being an old church, you had bodies down there.
Yes, and meanwhile, while Indy and Elsa are down below, a secret society group of guys are trailing behind to find out if these, to stop Indiana Jones and Elsa from even getting any knowledge about anywhere near the Grail.
We find it later, they're actually protectors of the Grail. Mm-hmm. They don't want to find it, they want to protect it from being found.
Yes.
Because they're a group of guys, I can't remember what they're called now, but there's so many of them, and they will make sure no one finds it. But wrong, they didn't read the script, did they?
No. Anyway, they follow them, and while they're Indian and Elsa are engrossed in their finds, these guys set fire to the catacombs that they find.
I shall explain so people haven't seen it. There was water down there, but there was a bit of petroleum mixed in with it. It must have been some sort of oil seam or something or whatever. And there was a layer of fuel there. So these guys, these protectors, threw a match onto it and it set fire to it.
Yeah.
Whoosh, through the cave. These poor little rats. Now, the rats. They scored a lot of real rats for this scene, but they had some mechanical rats as well. For when the fire went through, they didn't want to burn any raw rats. So anyone who's worried about rats, guinea pigs, any of those little rodent-y type creatures, the ones which were being burnt were actually mechanical ones.
Yeah.
They were not real ones. So there was no, what do you call it, animal cruelty involved.
Yes. Yeah. So
Just
anyway,
say that because it looked real.
yeah, it looked really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty interesting, especially when they dive under the water and the fire comes bursting through the entrance,
Yeah,
like
cool.
a big ball of fire.
Scary, folks.
It was scary.
Anyway,
but I think the most scary was that they Elsa and Indy underneath the using the coffin as a protect them from the fire, and that would have scared me, especially when the rats start clawing their way into the coffin.
Now, there was a bit of a tidal, this part doesn't get me, there was a bit of a tidal type drain there, and they actually got it through it, and they came up for a manhole in a plaza just outside the library.
Goodness.
So, much to the surprise of people having a bit of al fresco tea and coffee or whatever, and nibblies,
Yeah, and the race continues on with these guys chasing after our hero.
Well, those little motorboats, those little wooden motorboats, were really good. They had a chase scene involving three or four of those.
A few of them.
Yeah,
Would be better.
and Indiana Jones is in one, and he's getting there, and there's a great scene there.
Yeah.
Where they go between these two big boats, and
really
they're
cool.
coming together.
Yeah.
And Indiana goes, Elsa's driving the boat while Indiana's fighting.
Yeah, and she's saying, "Are you crazy? You don't go between them."
No, he says, "Don't go between the boats," and she thought he said, "Go between the boats." So she said, "You crazy?" And she went between the boats. And he said, "I didn't say go. I said, don't go between the boats." Anyway, what happened is the boat following them got jammed because the boats were moving together because the tugboats were putting them together, and that boat blew up. Now, they actually held that. That was really done, but they actually used cables and stuff to stop the boats getting too close together. So they did the first boat through it, where the Indiana was actually driving it, or stunt people. But the second one, the boat blew up, was actually on a platform, which they had an exploding platform, and they shot out like a cannon. That was done in 2 takes. The first one wasn't strong enough for the camera shot. The next one was big enough, and the second shot of that scene got it. But it was actually, it was very well done.
Yeah. Anyway, there's one last boat that's chasing Indy, and as they start shooting, somehow it affected the gasoline.
A couple of shots must have got in the motor, so boiling oil and stuff.
Yes, and somehow these 2 boats end up getting closer to the
propeller on the back of the boat.
Yes, and of course Indy jumps into the fellow boat and starts fighting with the 2 remaining men on it. And he finally grabs one of them and says, "Why are you trying to kill us?" And he says, "Because you're looking for the Holy Grail."
Excuse me, folks. No, I don't have the virus.
Yeah, and he says, my father was looking for the Holy Grail. Did you kill him too? And he says, no.
But we know where he is.
But yes, and he finally says, "If you don't let me go, we'll both die." And he says, "Then we'll die." And the man says, "My soul is prepared. How's yours?" And Indy says, "This is your last chance." But then the man says, "No, Dr. Jones, it's yours."
Your last chance. Yeah. Sorry,
meaning he was prepared to die for his cause, but Indy was not.
And then you want to find his dad anyway.
Yes, so he ends up helping the poor man.
But there was just, when they're doing this big propeller on the boat was sucking the little boat they were fighting on close to it and started to chop it up.
Yes.
Now, that was also done at Elstree Studios in a tank, and some of that was superimposed, and part of it was a model, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
It looked really impressive.
Yeah, so Indy helps support the man.
And these long-shot cameras, so they're close to it. Yeah.
Yeah, so Indy helps the man, and the man explains to what his role in this, why they were trying to kill Indy in the first place.
Yeah. Anyway, he said, your dad is being held at so-and-so castle. Was it in Austria or somewhere? Or?
Yeah, somewhere in the Austrian border, I think it was.
Austrian border, yeah. So the Germans had taken over, obviously.
Well, is it German border or Austrian border?
I think it's Austrian border. Yeah. I think the top of Italy had Switzerland, Austria, and that sort of stuff. So, but anyway, the Austrian border is a nice castle, very nice castle.
Yeah. Anyway,
one owner.
Yeah, and here's one scene in this movie I keep trying to figure out. How did Marcus was knocked out while they're in the library scene, and somehow he's back at the hotel they were staying at, and he's all right except a bump on the head.
He wasn't back at the motel. They ransacked his room, didn't they? But he wasn't there.
No, remember Marcus was there. Remember in the scene where they're back at the hotel and he was.
Oh no, okay.
They were looking at the map. I mean, looking at
That's right.
at some of the words that Indy traced in the off the artifact he found.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I'm getting things out of sequence there.
Yeah, he does.
But
Believe
anyway,
me, folks.
Marcus gets taken by the Nazis anyway.
Much later, but not now.
Yeah,
Dummy.
and he shows up later in there.
Yeah. So anyway, they look at the the details. They found out the possible spot that where this the Grail is placed, as it turns out, and Indy worked it out, and they figured out, and well, it's confirmed where the place is now. So Indy suggests to Marcus to go to the spot and try to find the Grail.
That's right. He goes to that place in Hatton.
Yes, something like that.
Yeah, whatever.
And,
some Middle Eastern place anyway.
And of course, brings us back to when he goes upstairs, he finds his room ransacked, and so is Elsa's room.
Yeah, so he goes off to the Middle East somewhere, and to meet up with Sala. Yeah, that's right. I forgot that. Yeah,
yes, brain dead.
And that's when he gets kidnapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway, Indy figures that their rooms have been ransacked, but I do wonder what time and day did that happen? I mean, time.
What's this?
When it was their rooms were ransacked, like what like the hours would have been. I mean, they couldn't have. They just arrived back there, and I don't think they would have had time to settle in just yet. And
well, it wouldn't take too much if someone had been trailing them, dear.
true.
They could have packed, put the stuff in the room, and said, "Let's go off to the museum or the library." Yeah. They could have come in 5 minutes later. Yeah. It wouldn't really matter.
Yeah, and because I noticed that when Elsa was playing loud music, it got me thinking. The loud music could have been covering the fact that she was scuffling around in Indy's room.
She was probably the one who ransacked his room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the music could have been a cover.
Feeling. No, well, not so much that. So she was pretending that she didn't know anything about it. So he was out there, and she ransacked his room, and she went to her room and ransacked her own room. Yeah. They went to the bathroom and have a bath. Or a shower or whatever.
So anyway, she soon finds out about the Grail diary and knows that Indy has had it all this time.
You didn't trust me?
Yes.
I didn't know
and
you.
This is where it gets well, they do a brief cuddle.
Arrogant.
Yes.
Yeah. He grabs her roughly and he kisses her and she grabs him in defiance and kisses him back.
And he says, leave me alone. I don't like fast women.
Yeah. Indiana Jones doesn't like fast women. Yeah, that's like James Bond doesn't like martinis,
Yes. And of course, my favourite scene, because in so many of those scenes, you hear him say, Venice. And that's one of my favourite
moments. His eyes roll back in his head like he's just getting ready to do the deed.
Yes. Yes. Well, then again, she's just wearing a bathrobe. You say more. I don't know why
she was ready. Yeah.
True. And then we break.
And she was prepared to do anything for the cause.
Yes. Even sleep with the enemy.
Well, yes. It has benefits.
Yeah, true. So anyway, our Elsa and Indy, they head off to the castle that house
where I believe Daddy is.
Yes, believe that Henry is. And
Daddy Jones.
I won't give into details of how he got in because it's too funny.
Yeah, no, you'd have a bit of a giggle about it. Yes, but anyway, he gets in there.
He gets in there.
And he finds Dad.
Yes, and his dad first knocks him out after him entering through the window.
I thought you were one of them says they wouldn't come through the window, they'd come through the door, Dad.
I think that was from Hogan's Heroes when he said that to some people.
Yeah, whatever.
When he was digging up.
It may have been. I don't know, but it was quite humorous. Actually, I think some of the lines and funny bits actually put in there by Sean Connery. I read somewhere. He contributed to some of the funny bits.
Yeah, I liked it whenever he kept calling Indiana Junior.
What is this junior? But we won't go. Actually, they tell Sala what this junior thing is later on.
Yeah, it turns out that Indy's real name is Henry Jones Jr.
Now, I was talking to Sarah the other day, what happens if Indiana Jones had a son and he called him Henry Jones? Now, would that be Henry Jones Jr. Jr.?
Or just Henry the Third?
Junior.
Well, I've already discussed it with you, and I already explained it to you about that.
Anyway, he saves Dad, and they're escaping from the Nazis.
Yeah, and this is the scene that
chase.
when the Germans enter Henry Jones's room, and they said, "We want the book now." And both Joneses say, "What book?" And how did they know that Indy had it in his pocket?
Because Elsa
Told him.
knew it. Yeah. So he's trying to save Dad, and while they're being escaping, they get caught.
Yes.
And when they get caught, the head Nazi guy, he grabs Elsa and threatens to kill her.
Yeah, and this is where
now Henry Jones Sr. saying he won't kill her. She's one of them.
Yeah.
Indiana's saying
What?
What? No, it's not. He's feeling sorry for the poor little girly whirly.
Yeah,
and he had a gun in his hand. He put the gun down and handed the book over to Elsa and stuff.
And not realizing that no, he didn't hand it over to her. She took it out of his pocket.
And she gave it to him.
Yeah, give it to the German guy. It turns out the German guy has a better poker face than Indy does.
Yeah, and Dad said, "I didn't trust her. Why should you?"
Yes, and then Donovan makes his grand entrance.
And he said, "Yes, I don't trust anybody."
Yeah, so much for advice. People do always accept good advice.
Even the naughty guy gave good advice. He didn't listen to anybody.
Yeah. Anyway, they noticed that in the map is all they want, and seeing as Mark, he already gave the pages that were in the Grail diary that were given to Marcus.
He ripped some pages out. And
yes.
What were with the map part?
The map part, but it wasn't enough, but these guys don't know that.
Yeah.
They say that the map is all they need, and the rest of the stuff is just copying. Not really important.
Well, yeah, but it was. There's stuff in the book which will come back later.
Yes. Anyway,
but they needed a starting point.
Yes, they do.
The map says, from so-and-so or other, but it didn't say where so-and-so was.
Yes.
And Indiana Jones had found a bit early on a place which doesn't exist anymore, Alexandretta.
Yes.
And that was the starting point for the map.
Yes, and just so you guys know, meanwhile, while all this is happening, Marcus is already in the very country, and he's as lost as a... lost anyway.
I'll tell you about Indiana tells the Nazis that you won't find Marcus Brody. He knows a dozen languages in dusk and customs. He'll blend in. You'll never find him. Next minute you see him in a cutaway say, "Does anyone speak English here?" And he's totally befuddled.
And the only person he knows there is Sala, technically.
Sala finds him in the crowd there and tries to spirit him away to keep him away from everybody,
and
the Nazis find him.
Yeah, Sala knows more about what goes on, and he knows...
He knows the Germans are in the area and stuff.
Anyway, they do the same sort of thing that Indiana Jones did in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Right, Dan?
Yeah.
Where while he's trying to hide Marcus, he hides him in a spot that most likely looks like a doorway, but as it turns out, it's an actual truck in disguise.
In the other movie, they had their car went into a plaza or marketplace, and there was a market stall area with an opening to go into it, and they drove into there, and they dropped the curtain down. It was the back of a truck, and they drove away. Whatever. Now this here. They ran up a ramp into a similar sort of thing, and it was a Nazi truck. How the hell would that get there, and how would they know to run up into it? I'll never know.
Yes, anyway, now they got the map and Marcus, and Indy and his dad are tied up and have nothing else to do except mope.
And have a chat.
Yeah,
about their sexual... their nocturnal activities with Elsa.
Yeah, and hearing that Donovan is planning on sending the Grail diary to the National Museum in Germany.
Berlin.
Berlin.
Yeah, so the Führer.
And he said in the scene that while the map is all they need, the Grail will just be Grail diary will just be a souvenir for their
because they left out the other stuff in it, it's useless.
Yeah, they just didn't realize.
They needed the map, which Marcus had.
Yeah, so Elsa gives India a hot kiss goodbye.
A very hot kiss.
Yes, even though Indy didn't welcome it, but Elsa wanted to give it.
Oh,
Don't ask me why, but that's what she
Well,
wanted.
maybe they've had sex the night before. It was really, really good.
Well, it was good for both.
Well, the day before, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, and the German sword general guy gave him a German goodbye by hitting him
That's how
in
we
the
say
face.
goodbye in Germany. Punch.
Punch.
Yeah. That's a bit rude.
And I liked what Indy and his dad said. I like the Austrian way better.
Anyway, they try to escape using Indiana's
His lucky
cigarette
lighter.
lighter. Now, interesting that. Have you noticed something about the cigarette lighter?
Yeah, it looks like it's a 4-leaf clover.
Yeah, well, it's an old Zippo lighter, which would have been common back in those days. Yeah, it had a 4-leaf clover on, or whatever.
Yeah, Lucky Charm.
Interesting. That a 4-leaf clover. He wasn't superstitious. So why would have a 4-leaf or a 3-leaf clover on his cigarette lighter?
I don't know. Maybe there was
He
the only
wasn't
one.
Irish.
Maybe, but it's people. It's he was just probably just.
Was the Shamrock?
Hey, Mike, bear in mind, he probably picked it up and just
It's a souvenir shop.
and just
there you go then.
thought nothing of it.
Anyway, but anyway, Dad's trying to burn the ropes and drops it on the carpet, and the lighter fluid spills out, and they set fire to the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh,
Dad,
yeah.
know.
Yeah, another thing I should talk about in this scene, when they were making the sound effects for the fire in this scene, they used a lot of homemade sounds in the sound department, using homemade items to mimic the noises of destruction.
cellophane crackling paper works.
Well, it was actually a styrofoam cup that made it.
Oh, you're saying yes, I look crackle.
Yeah, and when they did the rumbling scene for the trimmings in the cave scenes, where it was falling apart, it was used by a rubbing of a balloon doubled as a sound of
well, here's something
earthquakes.
for you. You know, the rat noises we talked about before, when there were rats underneath the church, they were chickens. Chicken noises. No, not quack quack or black blood. You know, when they do a clucking sort of weird noise, faint noises, and they use that sort of noise, and they obviously mucked around with it, and it came out for the rat noises.
Yes.
Interesting.
It is interesting. So anyway, our heroes are stuck in. They're out of the firing pan into the fire, and then Donovan would get a message. He gets a telegram, I think, saying that they got the map and they got Marcus, and the Fuhrer messaged them saying, you can have permission to kill the Joneses now.
That's a bit sad, isn't it?
Yes.
Anyway, irrespective.
They
leave, they get away, and they move on, and they have a bit of a chase.
Yes.
And it ends up that Indiana Jones and Dad have to go to Berlin to get the book.
Yeah.
And I don't go into it too much. We're already dragging us on too far.
Yeah.
Okay. They get to Berlin. There's a big book burning going on,
Yeah.
which was renowned in Germany back in that time.
Yeah, and
anyway, I'm talking at the moment. Okay. And Indy finds Elsa accidentally on purpose, and he gets the book back from her. And then he gets pushed aside into a crowd.
Yes,
and Adolf
and
Hitler's
guess who
there,
she meets?
And Adolf Hitler autographs the book for him.
Yeah, who would have thought that he just met Hitler, and while Indy is number 1 hit list on Fuhrer's hit list, he doesn't even know him.
They do get away, and they make their way to where the Holy Grail is.
Well, before we get to that, they end up riding on a blimp, and this is where my favorite scene comes into play, where Indy and his dad get onto the blimp, and guess who comes along for the ride? The general guy who's looking for them, and this is where the interesting bit, where Indy dresses up like one of the stewards, and he's checking tickets, and while the general's back is turned towards him, Indy says, "Tickets, please," and then he slowly turns and he gives him a punch.
And threw him out the window onto the luggage down below.
And this is the funny bit.
And all these people get the tickets out. So I've got my ticket.
Well, actually, he says, "No ticket," pointing to the man that just fell out of the plane.
All these people had the tickets. Yeah. Now the point is, I want to skip. There wasn't a great part. I want to get on to.
It's hilarious.
The main part is at the temple.
Yes.
And you're taking the long way. Let's get to the temple.
Well, not too late. We can't get to the temple just yet.
Okay, you want to go to McDonald's on the way through? I'll have a Big Mac, thanks.
There are
serve me
some
a
interesting
fries.
scenes
Some
in this,
shake? Yeah.
like when Indy discovers that the air blimp is turning around, meaning they've been discovered, and that means that they're going to get eventually caught by the bad guys. They then jump ship or jump blimp
Jump blimp.
and decide to take the plane down. And Mike, did you mention earlier that there's a mistake in the script in this scene?
I'm trying to remember.
You mentioned something about in the Temple of Doom. We found out that Indy didn't knew how to fly a plane.
Oh yeah,
but in this one, he does know it.
In one of the earlier movies, with Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
They said he was with Marion.
Yeah. No.
Marianne or whatever.
No.
Oh no. What's he?
Willie.
Willie. Yeah.
Good
Willie was
grief.
there, and they was stuck on a plane which is running out of gas, and said, "Do you know how to fly this thing?" He said, "No."
You do?
And now in this movie, he says, "I know how to fly it. I don't know how to land." So yeah. So I don't know how he learned to fly a plane in a couple of years.
Maybe he learned eventually.
Well, if you're learning to fly a plane, you learn how to take off and land. Okay?
Yes. Anyway, while they're flying out on the sky, a few enemy aircraft starts attacking, and it's up to Henry to man the machine gun.
And to cut a long story short, Henry Jones Sr. machine guns the tail of their own plane.
And he says, "Son, I'm sorry, they got us."
He wasn't going to admit it.
Of course not.
Naughty
Would you
boy.
admit to yourself that you just blew
Anyway,
a hole
they
through
had
the plane?
to crash land the plane. As an old saying, any landing you walk away from is a good landing. They both walked away.
Yes. Anyway, they soon they get into a man's car. They drive a bit, avoiding the other plane that's gonna kill them, and somehow they end up in a tunnel. And guess what? The plane ends up shooting right into the tunnel with them.
And it loses its wings and whatever, and blah, 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 blah.
And it explodes.
And they get away from that bit, and then the other plane drops a bomb in front on the road, and the car goes into it, and then they have to get out of the car and run down the hill onto the beach there, and they scare these birdies up there, which weren't seagulls, were actually pigeons or doves, and the plane goes into it, and it's one hell of a big bird strike, takes the plane out. Now let's go to Petra.
Yes. Anyway, this bit is when Henry was saying in this bit, he mentioned a poem or of a Shelley something, where he says, "Let my armies be the rocks and the trees." I found out
and the birds of the sky.
Yes,
something.
I also found out that that wasn't a real one.
Is that
poetry.
Is that a book of Charlemagne or something? Right?
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't exist.
Who said it's a fictional movie?
I looked it up. I found out that
it's a fictional movie. It doesn't have to exist.
Hey, Dad, it has historic things. The Grail, to a lot of people out there who probably believe it exists, and along with the Ark, and I don't know about the Holy Stones, but which remains to be anonymous, which will. Well, bear in mind, Mike, some of those things do exist, and that part doesn't exist.
I didn't say that some things don't exist. Not everything has to exist.
Yeah, anyway.
Now, let's go to Petra.
Yes.
We've been there in a whole day, folks. Really good.
Yes, anyway, they soon meanwhile, all the German guys, they arrive to the Emperor, or whatever his name is, his castle, who asks them, could we have permission to dig at this place and get the Grail and everything? And they say he's fine with it as long as they give him something in return.
Yeah, they had this really nice car,
Yeah.
a Rolls Royce, something or other. And it's okay. You have the keys in the ignition, so this king gave him a tank and some other things and supplies
and
whatever.
an armed escort.
Yeah, and whatever.
Even though the Germans are probably prepared with an escort of their own.
Anyway, the Jones family pursue them, and there's a bit of a chase.
Yes.
Daddy's in the tank with Marcus.
Just trying to save him.
And Indiana, and blah 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 blah. And
Mike, don't blah 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 blah.
Yeah, there's a big chase scene.
I know there's a
I'm
big
not going to go rock by rock, am I?
Yeah, well, get to the interesting part.
I was going to say I'm going to do blah blah blah, and in the end, Indiana Jones's dad, Henry Jones Sr., and Marcus escape the tank, and Indiana Jones is battling a Nazi guy, and the tank goes over a cliff. Now wait a minute, folks. Now there's a problem. The technical thing here. That tank was actually not. Well, it was not an historical tank. They actually made the tank and built it over. It's like a tractor or something rather. Okay?
I see.
It was still made of steel and stuff, and only does about 12 miles an hour.
Yes.
It was not going very fast. Now his horse would run faster, so they had to do some really strange shooting techniques to make it look like it was going faster than it was. Now there was a battle on it, and the close-ups were actually done on a freestanding on another construction with rubber tracks so no one hurt themselves. But the main one there was a real tank that they actually made new after a World War II design.
Yes. So anyway, Indy, while he's trying to fight off the bad guys, Henry and Marcus have gotten out of the out of the tank and everything. And this is one of the things that I like most in this scene, was when Marcus says, "How do I get off this thing?" And then Indy helped him by nudging him off
and
there.
he fell off.
And Henry says, "Where's Marcus?"
He's laying there flat on his back on the ground. Yeah, really good. Hey, he was safe.
Yes, true. And at least he didn't land the other way around.
Anyway.
But which is what happens in Henry.
Those guys escape.
Yes.
Indiana and the guy go over the cliff, and everyone thinks that Indiana died.
Yeah, and Henry's very glummed by it.
And he said, there's so many things I had to tell him. It wouldn't have taken 5 minutes. You know?
Yeah.
That sort of stuff, really corny line.
Yeah, and while they're all their eyes glued to the wreck, Indy is crawling out on the another part of the cliff.
Oh, by the way, they actually filmed a real model of the tank going over a cliff. So that wasn't CGI or anything. They made a model, a smaller scale, quarter scale, and that's what you feel. That's all going over the cliff.
Yes.
Anyway, they saw Henry come out. Well,
Indy.
We see Henry Jones Jr. Indy. We see him climbing up this vine, which is overhanging the cliff, and everyone's still looking over at the wreck. And he walks up behind him, and he looks over the cliff. What are you looking at? Yeah,
just like in those comedies you see on television.
And a big hug session. Okay, let's go. We've got things to do, and they all wander off.
And Indy's like, "Oh God,
wait a minute! Exhausted. He wasn't wearing his hat."
Yes.
He said, "Come on!" And all of a sudden, his hat blows up or gets thrown into the sea. Now I know that it didn't get blown up by the wind because there wasn't any wind. It was obvious that some stagehand or something rather, or
I think it's a joke.
Threw the hat into scene.
It's an ongoing joke that Indy can't go on without his hat.
Now here's something. I'm not sure if it's in this movie or one of the other movies. When he's on the horse, his hat kept coming off, so he got a staple gun and stapled the hat to his head so it wouldn't fall off.
I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark they did that.
Yeah, when he went on horse scenes. That's what I call dedication.
Ouch.
A staple gun. Staple gun. Bang, 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 putting an upholstery on the couch. Yeah, he used one of those and he stapled it to his skull.
Yes.
And I was going, you gotta be joking. I would have lost the hat myself.
Yes, anyway, our heroes go down this area of Petra. I mean, not really. The Canyon of the Crescent Moon, obviously, but it's filmed in Petra.
Yeah,
so
Petra and Jordan.
Yes, and this is probably my favourite moment in this movie is when you see the Petra.
Yeah, we go down through this. Anyone who's been to Petra or seen pictures, you go down through the seat, which is cut in the rocks. And the first thing you see is the Treasury building, Alcanaz or something or other.
Yeah.
And we've been there. It looks great. But you see this facade cut in the rocks, and you go in there. In reality, it's just a room, like a T-shaped room. You walk in, there's 2 antechambers. Yeah. And that's it. The rest of it was done, obviously, on soundstage in Ells 2 Studios. But gee, it looks so good.
Yeah, just so we can go before we can go on here. I'd like to point out the 4 horses in this scene. They're actually donated by the King and Queen of Jordan.
Didn't they stay there? Didn't they as guests?
Yeah, they stayed as guests. They watched the behind the scenes and probably just sat.
They weren't actors, were they? Extras?
No. I think they just watched it and got to know Stephen offset.
Yeah, and George, maybe Harrison.
Yeah, and not to mention the Queen offered Steven Spielberg a ride to the film site.
Anyway, they go in there, and Indiana Jones and company get there, and the German guys are already in there.
Yeah, and
Well,
they're
Donovan and the guys.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
they're using their get escort guys that were given by the guy
They're
who
trying to get through the.
Yeah.
There's 3 booby trap type things.
yes, and one of the first booby traps is a lot hard to get past.
Yeah, it's got these blades which come out of the wall and everything. It says only a penitent man can pass through this part here.
Yeah.
What it means, you have to get down low
Yes,
on your
but-
knees. And Indiana thinks of just at the end, and he drops down
Yeah.
and he rolls over.
But before we can get to that scene, we just to
It's
get.
okay, his dad got shot.
I know, but this is a very important scene because.
You've already been talking for 50 minutes.
Shut up, you. So anyway, in this scene where Donovan and his crew found Indy and his friends are covering in the entrance, and Donovan says, "I want you to go get the Grail, all that stuff." And,
No.
And of course, Indy, in his sarcastic nature, says, "Shooting me will get you nowhere."
Yeah, right. So he shot his father.
Yeah,
Not fatally enough to give him a lot of grief and maybe die of loss of blood in the next hour or so.
yes,
But, yeah.
and of course, in this scene, Elsa is a little sad that Henry's been shot.
Yeah, because she's not really a bad lady. She's just working for the wrong side.
Yeah, and I think she loved both of them when I think about it.
In a nice way,
Yeah.
But anyway, now he is coerced
Yes,
going
and
through there.
of course, Donovan says, this is one bit of dialogue I like when he says, when Indy is about to attack Donovan with his own bare hands if he can, he says, "You can't save him if you're dead.
Yes.
The healing powers of the Grail can save your father now. It's time you ask yourself what you believe.
Well, there you go. Now, I believe we should get on to and going through the next 3 bits. No.
Yes, anyway, so Indy slowly approaches the door.
And I've already told him that bit.
Yes, and he kept...
He gets through the first one I've
and
already
he keeps
mentioned.
the diary open while he's prepping himself for the for the lines.
So he got through the first booby trap thingy,
Yes,
which
where
I mentioned before.
Yes, and he was able to stop the blades using a bit of rope.
Oh yeah,
there.
he stopped the mechanism so that other people could walk through. Now,
Yeah.
the next bit reminded me a bit of the Goonies. You know, the floor fell apart.
Yeah.
Now this part here had a suspended floor. I don't know how it was suspended because there's nothing under it.
Yeah.
But it was all had little characters on it, like Greek characters spelling
Letters.
out the name Jehovah.
Yes,
Now,
and
you
yeah.
had to walk on them in the right
Letter.
order so you can get the other side. Now this part gets me,
what?
right?
Right.
He went through there. He knows how to spell Jehovah the right way with an I at the beginning. He walked through little stepping stones. He got through. Who told all the other people behind him how to spell it?
I don't know. Maybe they overheard him. I mean, he wasn't too far from the blades, and after Indy walked through there, that you see Donovan and Elsa walking up behind him, behind the blades.
Yeah.
That were now
You had Donovan up there. You had Elsa. You had the troops. You had everybody come through there after him.
well, not
How
really.
did they get through there?
Beats me.
Ah,
So anyway,
George and Stephen,
Yeah,
I think
and-
made an error.
yeah, anyway, I read somewhere that when they were doing this scene, when he was about to step on the J, there was going to be originally spiders and snakes in that area, but I think they decided
It's a
to
big hollow expanse.
make it a hollow,
Yeah, so
big drop
If
thing.
you tried the wrong thing, you'd fall into your death through a mighty fall on some jagged rocks or
Yes.
something.
Okay, and now he spells out the name Jehovah in using IEH.
Whatever.
O.
The right spelling.
Yeah. Anyway, he finally goes to the final challenge.
And it was called a leap of faith. It was a canyon.
Yeah. Leap from the lion's head. That's
Yeah,
what it's called.
And you look at it,
And
it was a canyon. It must have been, 20 metres across?
yeah, a deep drop, like
And a deep drop. And it says you had to be able to walk across there.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't see anything. There was no bridge.
yeah.
There's nothing there. So he crossed his fingers, put his hand on his heart, and took a step, and he found there was an invisible bridge.
Yeah, and when you look at it a different way, like
on an angle,
you
could
see
it.
it is a painted
It
bridge.
just blended in. It was an optical illusion.
Yeah, very clever.
Yeah. I wonder who made all this. The three knights couldn't have made all this.
I don't think they
What if
could.
God helped?
I like to think
Maybe
God
some
may have
angels
helped.
maybe came down.
I
or
think it
something.
was well, anyway,
Some may do.
Indy
Anyway.
soon gets across and out of, to make sure to
He finds his way back.
Yeah,
easily.
find his way
He
back.
throws some
He
dirt
throws
across
some
it.
dirt and
Yeah.
some rocks on it.
Yeah. Anyway, he goes in and he finds a chamber, and there's
Yeah.
this old cretinous looking
Yeah,
knight there.
as much as I know that this is 3 challenges, but I often think this might be a 4th challenge. This final one,
No,
this next
there's
one.
3 booby traps. The other one was to meet the other guy actually
Yeah.
guarding it. Which this old knight was about 700 years old.
Yes.
You bit like Yoda. Mm-hmm. Hey, Yoda was 700 years old too. You notice that?
Yeah,
Hey.
funny. Anyway, just so you guys know, when as I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but in when Steven Spielberg was making this movie, he was worried a bit that it was going to look like too much like Monty Python's and the Holy Grail. He was a bit worried about that, considering that there's a little medieval stuff in this one.
Well, anyway,
Yeah,
carry on.
but it does not matter. So to speak.
Anyway, everyone gets there in this area. Indy's there and he challenges the knight. The knight's almost running out of energy because he's getting too old.
he's been too old.
And he knew that someone was going to come to replace him
Yes.
because he was losing his strength. He just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And he looks at Indiana and says, "Strange clothes for a knight."
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't get that much, does he?
Of course not. Remember, he's been
I
there
was
for thousands of
joking.
years. He has no
700 years.
no breaks, no holidays.
No, hey, long service leave. Hey, he can get on a holiday.
No, he
No,
couldn't.
okay.
I mean, I think
Back
that he
pay?
was confined to that spot.
Yeah. But anyway, they had all these nice chalices.
Yes, and all of them
gold
are
and silver ones with
gold,
jewels.
silver, diamonds,
And
rubies.
the thing was, they had to pick the right
Right
one,
one.
which was the right container,
Right
which caught the blood of Christ at the crucifixion.
Yeah, and this is weird because I know that every one of us has heard of this story and have read the Bible over and over.
It wasn't mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah, I know that, but
Yeah.
but we all know the Last Supper. It was just an ordinary meal together with friends and stuff.
Well, yeah, they hired, or they borrowed a room in someone's house and went upstairs, or was it inn or something, I can't
Yeah.
remember now. And that was just an ordinary room in a place with probably a clay cup, and they broke some unleavened bread or something or other,
Yeah.
and some herbs, that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
they just had an ordinary clay cup. It was not a chalice like
Yeah.
you'd see in a church.
Yeah,
It wasn't
so
made
anyway-
out of gold or silver.
Anyway, Donovan, as he says in this movie, says, "I'm a historian, but I don't know what it looks like. Which one is it?"
So Elsa,
Elsa,
said, I will choose it.
Yes.
And she chose. I got a funny feeling she chose the wrong one intentionally
I think she did too.
because I think she just realised that Donovan
He's a
was
total
not a
ass.
very nice man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Something
she
look in her eyes when she
yeah,
looked over at
and
Indiana
the
and stuff.
some of those cups there, they look like the chalices you see in churches and stuff, which probably gives the idea that maybe some individual would mistaken a chapel cup to the ordinary cup that Jesus would have.
And Christians, they go to a Christian service. I mean, you had to go nice silver or gold-looking chalice where you got the Eucharist there and whatever. They were thinking it was going to look like something like that, but it was
Yeah.
actually a clay cup.
Yes.
It was made on a wheel with clay and then baked
Yes.
in an oven. That's all
So
it was.
Donovan
Yeah.
gets it, and he's starstruck on how beautiful
And
it
he has
looks.
a drink.
Yes, and as he drinks, he starts to feel a bit funny.
Age rapidly.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing I found out. When they were doing this scene, they had to do several shots of Donovan's dying sequence and merge them all together to make...
Well, he had to change his makeup a bit in the
yes.
first bits.
And the last one, I would say, was a puppet.
Yeah, and then some still frame in there as well, and
Yeah.
a few things mixed in.
Yeah, and this is
Yeah.
probably one of the first ever digital effects they did
Oh, it was
in
digital,
those
okay.
days. So
And it
it
worked
was
well.
very a new thing back then.
He really went to pieces, didn't he?
Yeah, it was very awesome when you look at it.
Anyway, he snuffs it.
Yes.
Okay, now Indiana Jones walks up to all these chalices. He goes, and he looks at this little clay cup. It says,
Yeah.
"That's the cup of a carpenter." Now he's wrong there. It wasn't his cup.
True.
He wasn't. He didn't carry his own cutlery and picnic gear with
I
him.
know, mate.
It was a borrowed cup. He said, Oh, that's a cup for Carpenter. That would have come from one of the other people.
I know that, Mike, but
So,
he's speaking figuratively, like
a peasant's cup.
Yeah, meaning Jesus, we all know, he wasn't a material king.
Yeah.
He was an ordinary carpenter.
He wasn't rich in earthly things. Yeah, so he would not have had that silver chalice.
Yeah,
so this chalice was an earthenware one.
A lot of people in the artistic world would paint Jesus as a god or king in paintings.
A big throne and everything
with a
else.
big throne, sometimes a crown, sometimes
really nice crown, like
depending
Queen of
on
England,
depending on your artistic impression of Jesus.
Yeah. But he's a commoner. He was an ordinary man.
Yes.
But anyway, irrespective,
he then takes the water.
He had a drink. He feels pretty good.
Yes, and of course the knight says, "You've chosen wisely." And then he gives some advice saying, the Grail must not go past the Great Seal.
There's a Great Seal will be at the front of the cave.
And if you lie across, you'll be in a hell of trouble.
The problem is this will give you eternal life if you stay here in the cave.
Yes.
But so anyway, he gets the holy water in the
cup.
Sacred cup, and he takes it to his father, gives his dad a drink, and pours some on the wound, and the wound disappears, and Dad gets better in a couple of moments.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah,
and put the doctors out of work, won't it?
Yeah, definitely. But bear in mind, remember what the knight says, that you could stay in the place and live forever, but outside you'll be you have better chance of living like any other person.
So anyway.
Oh, by the way, guys, there was a deleted scene in this. I don't know if it was a deleted scene because it was in the book where the knight comes out of the cave, and he says that now that Indy has proven himself, he can take over for him. But Indy, he's not playing.
He wasn't keen to take over the job.
And his dad too old. And Marcus says, "I'm a scholar," and Dear Sala, he doesn't fit the criteria either.
Well, Sala wasn't even a Catholic.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, he was Islamic, I think.
Yes, and
anyway,
irrespective, Elsa is eyes are glued to the cup.
She wants to take
and
it.
She takes it, and she says, "Let's go."
Come on, Indy, let's get out of here.
Yes.
And she walks across the seal, and then the whole place starts to break up like an earthquake's going through it. Now, I want to talk about the scene.
Yes.
That was all done on platforms which were cut to look like breaking up ground and whatever. Mm-hmm. And they had to every time they had to do a shoot, they had to reset the platforms. Mm-hmm. Reset the hydraulics and put some plaster in between all the cracks, and then just let it set a bit, and then just redo it. Apart from the part where the Holy Grail was thrown in that crevice, that was a separate bit, so they can leave that normally open.
Yeah.
So they had to throw that chalice there several times. I think it's up to 6 times trying to get that shot because they kept missing the ledge.
Yes. Yeah, I can imagine that. So anyway, whole place is crumbling. All the Germans everyone is frantic.
Well, yeah, some of the troops who the paid troops had already run away by now.
Yes,
so as soon as Dad got better, they said, "I'm not hanging around here." They went.
Yes,
and
zooming out the entrance.
So all he had left was Donovan, one or two of his henchmen.
Well, Donovan's dead, remember?
I know. Well, Donovan was in there, but his henchmen. A couple of those guys. Mm-hmm. Ilsa, who died subsequently.
Yeah, and Indy tries to hang on to her as much as possible.
She falls down the
and she tries to reach out for the Grail, like
her greed, her avarice, whatever.
Yeah, and as her glove hand is slowly slipping.
On it, and his hands getting sweaty, and just I can't hang on. And she wouldn't grab on with both hands, and she fell down. That was a good shot. I mean, there would have been a mattress or something down there to fall onto through the clouds, or whatever.
Yes,
dust,
and then
looked good.
Yeah, and then somehow the cliff breaks, and Indy is in the worst state.
He's in the same position season, but his dad grabs him. Dad's pretty fit for an old man.
Yeah, and
he saves it.
Yeah, and all the time his dad's saying, "I need your other hand," but his son kept saying, "I can get the Grail. I almost reach it."
And he said, "Leave it."
Yeah, and he even said,
Dad had been chasing the Grail all his life.
Yeah, and in the scene, the interesting scene is that this is the first time he calls him Indiana instead of his Junior. Meaning he's starting to realize that finally realized he's a man.
He's not his little boy anymore.
And he's not his little boy anymore.
Yeah, but anyway, Dad saves Indy.
Yes.
And they get out of the place, and the night waves goodbye.
Yeah, I think that
after trashing his house.
No, I don't think it's like that. I think the knight. I think he's a bit relieved that he can finally have peace, and maybe
he'll probably die shortly.
and maybe be able to move on and
go to heaven,
go to heaven and be with all his brothers
and
up there.
else.
Yeah, I think that's a nice bit because he's been alive for so many years.
700 years in solitude. That's, I think, and people worry about being stuck at home during the coronavirus couple of weeks. Hello, guys, 700 years. Deal with it.
Yeah. So anyway, they dash out, and of course the outside isn't the worse for wear.
Yeah, actually, it's really funny that because you come out of the the real building in Petra, and you got this big cloud of dust coming out of it. Now we went over there on an archaeological expedition tour years ago, and our tour leader was an archaeologist, and he was worried that they'd actually did something nasty inside the building, and he couldn't wait to get there on his next trip to make sure it hadn't been damaged. So it was a smoke bomb. How stupid can he be? I mean, I know
don't be nasty.
I know he's
he
a
may be
lovely
listening
man.
as we speak.
He won't be listening to this, but he's a lovely guy. But you would think it was a dust bomb. So it's called special effects in a movie.
I know that, Mike.
But it wouldn't have damaged a place like otherwise he would have been shot by the king and queen of Jordan.
Yes, anyway, Indy is a little still upset that Elsa is dead or died inside there. And his father explained to him that Elsa never believed in the Grail. She thought she found the prize.
And it wasn't a prize. Actually, I like to think that the Grail was, I mean, if it was really found, there's a problem with it. But I like to think that if I'll hate to think, if it was found, that people would try to worship the relic.
I agree.
It's not the relic, it's what it symbolises. And these people in these sort of stories, they get it wrong. I mean, it symbolises something. It's like that we saw the tomb that Jesus was supposed to have been in Jerusalem. This is supposed to be where he was laid after he was taken down with the cross. People go there and visit it. Now, the point is, it's a hole in the wall. It was an empty cave. It's not the cave that's important. It was the man who was actually inside it.
Yeah, so
they get things wrong.
Yeah, so Indy asks his dad what did he learn from his experience after this quest.
He received illumination, was it?
Yes, some spiritual enlightenment, if you don't understand.
Or whatever, yeah.
I used to thought it was elimination, but now I know it's illumination, right?
Well, yeah, he's enlightened because Henry Jones Sr. was looking at it as not so much a sacred relic for the church sort of thing because he believed in the religious side of it.
Yeah.
But he realised it was much more than what that was. I mean, it was something more special. Finding it wasn't important. The fact that he knew it existed.
Yeah. Anyway, our final scene is where they jump on their horses and Salah asks them, "What is this? Why do you call him Junior?
What is this Junior business?" Yeah.
Yeah, and he says that's his name, Henry Jones Jr. And Indy says, "I like Indiana," and Henry says, "I named the dog Indiana."
And Salah says, "You're named after the dog."
Yeah, and Indy says,
chuckle.
And Indy says, "I had a lot of fun memories of that dog." And of course, they all ride their horses out of
into the sunset, and lovely.
And
good shot too, nice long shot.
Yeah, it was a beautiful shot, sunset and everything.
Actually, we were talking about this the other night. When you finish a movie, sometimes people say, "Or fade to black," and then you see credits. This one actually had this long shot of them riding away in the sunset while the credits were rolling. It was a great way to finish an action adventure movie. I think it was fantastic.
I agree.
Sometimes they get the closures wrong. A dead drop, fade to black, whatever. It just doesn't work for some movies. This one, if it just let's go now and went black, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. Anyway, I did think it was beautiful, especially the red
The
sky,
red sun.
the yellow
Beautiful.
sun,
Yeah,
the black silhouette of our heroes riding off in the sunset.
Hee-haw.
Yeah, I did think that was my most favorite bit in the movie where they just right off in the sunset. I mean, a lot of the times it's we see our Indy kiss a girl and that's the end of the story. But this one is a lot more cooler.
It is. This is getting to be one of our longer ones. We'll try to wrap up next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. So, is there anything other development
Just a couple of little
you want to
things.
mention?
I'll just talk about the technical side a little bit. The original script was nothing like the end script. It had things like haunted houses or castles in Scotland and different things, and and battling a ghost and
You already mentioned that.
No, I'm saying, and it was rewritten, and it was tweaked and rewritten, and second and third and final drafts over several years before they came up anywhere close to what this end result was. It just worked and worked it and worked it and worked it and worked it, and one of the writers who tweaked it wasn't even mentioned as a tweaker.
Yeah, I think that was the ghostwriter mentioned.
The ghostwriter, yeah. But in the end, they fine-tuned it and they took out a couple of scenes which didn't think would work and added some stuff. And at one stage had a Monkey King involved. It just had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I think the final draft came out pretty good.
I think it would. I think it was. I did like the whole Holy Grail quest idea.
Yeah. I don't think Steven Spielberg wanted to do this because he didn't like the idea of the Holy Grail stuff. He wanted to do the spiritual side or something. There's something he didn't want to do about it. I can't remember now.
Well, I think
but I think George talked him into it.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah.
And I think that Well, the idea of a Monkey King sounds interesting in theory, but I just don't know if it will be as effective.
We've gone past the Monkey King. So Stephen didn't want to do this about the Holy Grail. He just didn't feel comfortable because of the supernatural and other bits and different things. You want to get back to a bit like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's pretty. There you go. We got the trophy. A quick bit at the end. That was it. So he didn't want to get into it too much, but George talked him into it, and
that was nice of him.
And after about 3 or 4 different incarnations of the script, it came out to what we actually saw at the theatre, and it came out really, really, really good.
Well, we did bear in mind, I did say that Steven Spielberg was worried that it would people would rethink about Monty Python's Holy Grail and think about that instead of this current movie.
Yeah,
I mean, this is probably one of the reasons why every time I think about the new Star Wars movies, I keep going back to the old Star Wars movies a lot.
Now, just getting on to other things. There were multiple locations here. They filmed them in Spain, Italy, West Germany, Jordan, United Kingdom. Now, United Kingdom is obviously Elstree Studios, and some other places. They had some of the internal shots were done in buildings, could be anywhere. But yeah, they did all that sort of thing, and I think Elstree was used on the previous 2 movies, or at least the last movie anyway. They must use them a fair bit. The castle they used, that was in West Germany.
Wow.
Yeah, that was Bersheim. Bersheim Castle in West Germany.
Wow.
Yeah. The interior is done at Elstree Studios, yeah. The airport was done at Lawrence Hall in London.
Oh, I think I read that then.
Yeah, so I've got a few notes here. I can't remember all these things, folks, honestly. There's just so much involved with
and they
some
kind
of
of
movies.
put, on those, the airport, they kind of put the, German, flags on the walls there.
Yeah. It makes it good.
A bit of I think that I don't know if the the location, they probably were a little offended by the idea of the flags there.
Yeah.
But then they explained to the people out there, this is just a film. We're not gonna turn German all of a sudden.
Well, actually, another point. I'm just going into different things. When they did the shots in Venice when in the Grand Canal, which with the ghetto de Venice will probably stay near there, they actually had to get permission to lock off the Grand Canal area for a period of time to keep the tourists out of the area.
Oh, that would be hard.
Back in 1930s, when there would have been very few tourists there. When they made the movie, there would have been thousands of tourists there and gondolas and motorboats going. They wanted to make it look like an ordinary day in an ordinary town.
Yeah, true.
And they had to scale down tourists. They had to lock off. They used to have permission by the local mayor or whatever.
That must have been really hard, considering that there was like a lot. I mean,
yeah, it may not have been a tourist season, which is a good start. Yeah, so
Considering that they have to, other than
actually, it wasn't the tourist season. It was about August.
okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I was saying, that it must have been difficult trying to make sure that they keep everything look like 1938
And there's another
period.
point. The camera guy, the DOP, had to focus his camera in such a way, or angle it, so he wouldn't pick up satellite dishes on the top of the buildings and stuff like that. Because
Yeah, and that would have been very difficult, guys. Even if the spot you film at turns out to be a very nice
a
spot.
satellite dish. Oh Lord, yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw a jet go past. Okay, that ruled it.
This is the sort of things that I have to deal with every now and then.
Someone's going past a jet ski. Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they got rid of all those problems and came up pretty good.
Agreed.
I did mention the tank was built over an old excavator. Yeah, okay, I did. Yes, that was. I got a couple of notes here.
Too many.
Oh no, it's when you get a good movie with lots of good effects and stuff, and it's good to have.
I certainly like the whole how Steven Spielberg befriended the king and queen in Jordan. That's pretty much an interesting thing.
Oh, by the way, at the beginning in the prologue, you went and had Henry Jones Senior.
Yeah.
Sitting at his desk, but you didn't see his face.
Ooh.
That was a different actor.
I think it was, and
it was a stand-in.
Yeah, I think that at the time, maybe that while they were filming that scene, that they had another actor who was going to play Indy's dad, but he turned it down, and
I don't think
that's
so.
one of the reasons why we don't see his face or hear his voice.
No, I don't know if he's I think Sean was going to be the first. I think he might not have been available, so going to do a stand-in for that scene.
I know. I
don't think he's going to be chosen for the role. They wanted Sean Connery in there.
Yeah, I figured that, but I do think that's one of the reasons why we didn't see his face for that particular scene, because
he might not have been available, but they dubbed his voice.
So they dubbed his voice, shot his hand and just part of his shoulder.
Yeah, he put his hand up and said, "Stop! Don't talk. I'm writing down," and blah blah, and that was all. That's all fake.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And who knows whose body shot they may have taken from that scene.
Yeah. Now, if you didn't, me, it would look like Jabba the Hutt.
But then again, even James Cameron, I told you guys about, in the Titanic, he was the guy who was drawing for that scene, of Rose in the Titanic.
Oh, yes, what you said. Yeah,
I told it to you guys a while back, I think.
Anyway, this review, this podcast has gone on for a little bit over time.
Yes. So, how do you rate this movie, Mike?
Well, look, I like Spielberg, and I like Lucas working together as a team.
Agreed.
I've seen Spielberg stuff. Close Encounters. George wasn't involved in that, was he?
No.
No. Spielberg did Close Encounters. That was a great movie.
Yes, he did Jaws and
Jaws, yeah.
Yeah.
So Spielberg is a great director. I don't care what anyone says.
Me too.
And George Lucas is a great story writer. His scripts are great. I can't knock a movie of this caliber. Sure, they could have done one or two little things different. I picked up a couple of little things that weren't quite right. But hey, I'm a realist to know that things aren't always going to go 100%. 99.9% is pretty damn good.
I do admit that when they did the scene where in the German castle, when Indy was caught by those German guys, it's a big annoying that he never picked up the fact that when they mentioned the book and they said where it was placed, what if it was in his special bag? His shoulder bag that he often carries with him all the time. How come he didn't pick up that Elsa was the only one who was aware of where he put it?
Because he watched him get dressed up and had sex. No, I don't know, but anyway, irrespective, I'm going to give this 9.5 to 10. I mean, to me, it's a 10. Honestly, I know these movies have to be 10.
Yeah, well,
I can't fall even with that couple of glitches I mentioned.
Yeah,
I can live with them.
Yeah, I can live with them too, and I don't see a big problem. So I give it 10 too. So we got another 10 out of this.
Can we get a crappy movie and do a 6 or a 5 later?
Yeah, we can give it a try.
That'd be nice.
So let's give this movie a good hand.
And wait, Raiders Lost Ark.
Temple of
Temple
Doom.
of Doom. And this one, Crystal Skull, not real sure yet.
We'll let you guys know in the next podcast
We
episode.
don't know. I don't want to do Crystal Skull, but she does. But we'll see what happens.
Well, some of you guys out there may want to do it all, mostly.
You know, this is double the length of a usual podcast. Can we actually finish off now? These people might want to go to bed.
Okay, Mike. So, thanks for listening to our latest podcast episode. So, if you guys haven't seen this movie yet, I suggest see it first and then watch our review last.
And if you have seen it before, go and revisit, especially if you're a nice digitally remastered copy. It looks great. A Blu-ray copy even better.
Yeah, so...
And buy it.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to us. This is Sarah Stephenson and Mike Stephenson signing off.
Bye.